In this episode of Ideas, I talk with Inc.com writer, has over 1,500 articles there. Also, LinkedIn influencer Jeff Haden. We talk about his brand new book, Motivation Myth, and some of the ideas within it. And the ideas really challenged me, and I hope they challenge you as well. All right, here's our conversation. Today's guest is Jeff Haden. He's a popular Inc. magazine contributing editor and LinkedIn influencer, and he's also the ghostwriter of dozens of books. And he's here today to talk about his new book, The Motivation Myth, How High Achievers Really Set Themselves Up to Win. Jeff, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you, Adam. It is my pleasure, believe me.
Well, it's good having you here, and I'm really excited about this conversation because I heard that the book was coming out. And just from the title alone, I knew that it was going to be something different than a lot of books out there. And then I saw the cover, and the cover is great too, by the way.
I wish I had something to do with that, but thank you.
Yeah, no, it looks great. And so I just wanted to bring you on the show and hear you out, hear what you had to say, because I'm always for new ideas. My listeners are looking for new ideas in their lives that might spark something different in their life to take different actions. And that's what it's all about when it comes down to it. Action is what brings all of this into existence and makes our lives better. But my first question to you, from the title, The Motivation Myth, if motivation is a myth, and that's not what brings about success, then what is it then that actually produces success?
Well, let's talk about the word spark that you used just a second ago, because I think that's important. I'm lucky enough, I write for Inc. magazine, and so I'm lucky enough that I get to meet lots and lots and lots of very successful people. And then I also run into lots of people who don't feel they are as successful as they would like to be, or they feel stuck, or it's like they're waiting for this moment of inspiration or passion or motivation, or as you put it, spark. And they wait and they wait and they wait. And I contrast that to all of the really successful people I talk to, none of whom ever describe having had this lightning bolt moment where they say, oh my gosh, I just figured out what I want to do, what I want to be, and I'm supercharged and ready to roll. But none of them have that. They all just have something they're interested in, and they decide to pursue it. And what happens in the course of pursuing something you're interested in and trying to get better at it, you have these little small successes, oftentimes on a daily basis. And that feels good, because we all like to feel good when we do something well or when we've learned something. That feels good. That makes you happy. And that creates a little dose of motivation that carries you into the next day and gets you going again. So this idea that you have to have this lightning bolt hit you before you can start on something is one of the big fallacies. And I think it's one of the big things that holds people back, because they're waiting for that to find them, when actually you can find all sorts of passions just by starting, trying, enjoying a teeny bit of success, and then letting that virtuous flywheel of, as I described, effort, success, fulfillment equals motivation, and it starts all over again. That's how every successful person that I've talked to built the success that they achieved.
That's interesting. Yeah, and I should probably watch the language I use as well. But, you know.
Well, no, I think you're right, though, because your spark is much better. A spark is just this tiny little flame that you get, and you say, you know what, I'm interested in that. And that's enough of a spark to make you say, you know, I think I would like to try that. I think I would like to maybe become that, however you want to phrase that. But it's just something you want to start trying. And that's the little spark you need. And then you can continue creating all these little sparks that keep you going by effort and achievement, as opposed to this big fiery ball of flame that, you know, engulfs you and causes you to have all the passion you need for the rest of your life. I'm sure there are people out there who, when they're 14 years old, realize what it is they want to be and chart that course and never look back. I just haven't met one. So good on them if that's the case. But for the rest of it, for the rest of us, it's a different process. And I think that thought is actually really empowering, because it means you can look around and say, I'm interested in that. I'm going to try that, and I'm going to work at that. So that's really cool, as opposed to, I can only find one thing and I have to carry it out for 45 years. And if I pick the wrong thing, and I'm stuck forever, you know, that holds a lot of people back too, because you think, wow, if I get 5 years into this and it turns out that I don't love it the way I did at first, then I've wasted all that time, which, that's one of the points I make in the book about serial achievement. You don't have to do just one thing your entire life in order to be successful. You can do over the course of years, 5, 6, 7 things at a really high level. And I think that's a much more fun way to live.
Yeah, no, that's really good, and it's really freeing for people to just start. And I want to talk about that whole idea behind success since we're on the subject. Do you believe that then a lot of success is in the action of just starting?
Oh, absolutely. Well, first you have to find what success is. And I think that's different for everybody. I talk about success a lot of the times and people say, wow, you're just talking about money or fame or fortune or something. And that may be your definition of success, but your definition could be something else. And it should be whatever you choose. But the people that go the farthest and the people that enjoy long-term success tend to see success as, I worked hard today. I accomplished the things that I set out to do. They're part of an overall plan that I hope takes me somewhere. But by looking at it on a day-to-day basis, it allows you to feel good about yourself every day, and it allows you then to move on to that next day. So to me, success starts with starting, and then success continues with, this sounds so cheesy now that I'm getting there, but it continues with continuing. Because if you quit, you can't succeed. And if you don't start, you can't succeed. And it really is just a process of steps that take you to where you want to go. And I know that sounds really trite, but if you look around at anybody that's achieved anything huge, they took a little bite of the elephant every day.
Well, it's not trite because, yes, people say it, but nobody does it. That's the thing. Everybody, knows that if you continue to do it, it's actually getting people to do it. That is the problem. But there's something in your book that reminds me of, and you say, I don't have the exact wording in front of me, but you say there's either 2 or 3 areas that you need to take care of before you start making goals in other areas of life, like financial or health, because you knew guys that were focusing on other things, but they foreclosed on their house or something like that. I found that really interesting and important.
Exactly.
If you would share about that part, because I after I read that, I was like, that is a good point to make.
Well, the whole, I guess one of the ways to frame that would be kind of the starving artist thing, where there's this theory that, the person that's following their passion for creativity and art, and yet they're not making ends meet and they're barely making it, but somehow they're blissfully happy because they're following that passion. I don't know how that's possible over the long term, because there are certain things you have to take care of. You have to have enough money, however you define, making a living, because it doesn't have to be a ton of money, but you have to make enough that you're comfortable and you're not desperate and you're not always looking around thinking, oh my gosh, my house is about to be foreclosed on. Health-wise, you can follow some pursuit, but if your health is failing and you feel terrible all the time and it's, increasing your risk of mortality and lots of stuff like that, that seems kind of self-defeating to me too. So the point of that was just to look around if you're trying to choose a goal, because that's a really hard thing for people sometimes to decide, what is it that I actually want to accomplish? The first place you ought to start is, family, if you have one, health, a little bit of financial security, just enough so that the wolf is not always at the door. And then when you've taken care of those things, then you have the luxury of looking around and saying, okay, I've got that kind of well in hand. Now, what else would I like to achieve? So if your house is constantly under threat of foreclosure and you're spending 4 or 5 hours a day training to run a triathlon or something, you might be a little misplaced. And that was really just the point of that. And it seems like sometimes that part of some of the strategies that I discuss in the book, it may take you 6 months or a year or a couple of years to accomplish something really big. And so it seems like a short-term approach to goals. But really what I'm trying to lay out is you have a long life in which you can achieve tons of things, but that's only possible if you actually are able to live that life in a reasonable fashion and feel good about yourself, So you can chase things all you want, but I really do think that some of that stuff is non-negotiable as far as choosing goals. So people will say to me, I don't, help me pick a goal. And I'll say, well, this will sound terrible, but work with me. But if you weigh 400 pounds and you can't climb the steps in your house, and your blood sugar is high, and you've got a bunch of different things going on, maybe that's the place you start. That would be a really good goal, because not only will you feel better about yourself, but you'll probably live longer, and I'm sure your family would like you to do so. So that's a pretty good goal. So I know I just went way around the barn. It's a Southern thing, but that was kind of the point. There is that there are some things that really should be non-negotiable if you want to live a long and happy and fulfilling life.
No, I mean, I finished the book and just walked away from it thinking that it was a really smart way to look at goal setting, rather than, the fluff and the emotional side. And then there's the facts and looking at your life. And it just seemed like a really smart take on goal setting.
Well, and the cool thing about the goal setting part, like if we talk about the financial side, it's possible to have goals that work on multiple levels. So if you're struggling financially, but there's something, career-wise that you want to do, it's possible to marry those and say, okay, I need to make more money if that is what you need, but I also want to be whatever this is. How do I do this so that I become so good at whatever it is I want to be that I can earn more money or earn the living that I want to make, whatever that is, so you can accomplish multiple things at once. If you're trying to lose weight, but your goal has always been to run a marathon, that is a perfect double dip goal. Because if you get in good enough shape to be able to run a marathon, if you're overweight right now, I guarantee you will weigh less at the other end. Yeah. So there's a lot of ways that you can double dip on your goals. And that's a cool thing too.
That's really good. And before we dive in more into the book, I want to ask you a question. Just as I was reading it, a saying came to me. And while we're talking about success, I wanted to ask you about it. What would you say to the idea that success can create laziness? Is it something else that makes us lazy, or success? What do you think about that?
I think it all depends on how you set your goals and what your goals are. Mm-hmm. So if your goal is, let's say that one of your bucket list goals is to run a marathon. We'll use that example again. And your only goal is to go and complete one marathon. When you get done with that, if you are at the end and you've completed that and you don't have anything else, you still feel really good about yourself because, wow, I did something really hard. And that is cool. That is a great feeling. But if you don't have something else and that was your finish line, then it's easy then to kind of slough off and fade. And it's also harder to work as hard as you need to achieve really big things if you have achieved a few and you feel comfortable, so to speak. So at that point, if you're, how do I say this? If you're my age, which is old, and you feel pretty comfortable, and you feel like you've achieved some things, and you've got life well in hand, or as well in hand as it could possibly be, you think. Sometimes it's okay to set a different type of goal that doesn't require maybe the level of commitment and sacrifice and determination, that might just be a little bit more fun or something like that. But having said that, the things that make me feel best about myself in terms of goal achievement are always the things that were really, really hard to do. Yeah. Because that's when you get to sit on your porch at the end of the day and say, wow, I worked really hard today and I'm making a little bit of progress. And that feels really good. Buying a new house, if you buy a new house, I think the happy feelings last, I think statistically like 2 months or something. New car is probably 2 weeks, but if every day you've worked hard and feel like you gave it a good effort and that it's getting you somewhere in life, wherever that somewhere is that you are choosing to go, then you can do that every day and you can feel good every day. And I'd like to think that's what we're all looking for.
Absolutely. And what I got from that is learn to fall in love with the journey. I mean, is kind of what you're saying there. Yeah,
but it's really funny. You can fall in love with all sorts of journeys. So just to prove a point about process, and I'm sure you read this part in the book, I decided one year that I wanted to do 100,000 push-ups. And so that was not that was not a lifelong goal. That's not some bucket list thing. I just sort of pulled that out of nowhere and thought, okay, what can I do that seems really drudgy and really hard that kind of proves how this works? And so, and I had no, I wasn't really interested in doing it. I guess that's the best way to phrase it. So I did the math and said that's 374 a day. And so my goal was to do 400 a day just in case I had a bad day or something happened and I create a little bit of buffer. And so at first it was terrible. It was really dull. I hated it. But then I got to where I was doing more reps per set and I was resting less between and it was taking less time. And it actually got to be oddly fun. And it wasn't that I enjoyed the push-up part. I enjoyed writing on my spreadsheet every day, putting that 400 in a block. I thought that was fun. And it's kind of that Jerry Seinfeld approach to writing jokes where he has a calendar, and he still does, and he puts an X mark every day because his goal that day is to write at least one good joke. And if he does that, he puts the X mark, and he gets to look back at all those X's, and it feels really fun over a period of time to have put this string together of small achievements. And so the same thing worked with the push-ups. And so it's funny that you can choose all sorts of things that you don't even have to necessarily be super interested in. But if you do the work and kind of create that routine and get into the flow, it becomes oddly satisfying to keep doing what you set out to do that day. And I think that's one of the most satisfying things in life, is to have a plan for the day and to work the plan and get to the other end and say, I did what I set out to do that day. And that's that flywheel of motivation from fulfillment, and you get to do it every day.
Yeah, no, that's really good.
I will not do another year of 100,000 push-ups, though.
I bet you won't. I bet you won't.
Well, I've done it. Why do it again?
Yeah. So when you say in the book to make a goal and then forget a goal, does that kind of tie into that idea you just shared, or is that something different? How does that work?
That's part and parcel of it. So
okay,
let's use the marathon example again. If you decide you want to run a marathon and you're not a runner and you haven't run for years, so you go out the first day and you run a mile because that's what your plan says, and you come home and you feel terrible and your knees ache and it seems awful and that mile was hard. If you pop your head up and look out across the distance and realize that someday you have to run 26 of them, that is a huge gulf that you have to conquer, and it's incredibly defeating. So if you're focused on that goal of 26 all the time in those early days, you're always going to look and compare yourself where you are now to where you have to get and think, oh my gosh, this is impossible. It's too far. It's too hard. I'll never get there. But if all you do is focus on, so the point is your goal informs your plan. So I know what my goal is. It's 26. So now I can look at that and say, okay, in order to accomplish that, what does my plan need to be? Put that together. And then forget about the end and just every day look at your plan and say, what's on today? What do I need to accomplish today? And if you accomplish that today, you get to feel good about yourself. You don't have to compare yourself to that 26. You can compare it to, I don't know, whatever, the 3, whatever it may be. And you get to feel good. And at some point you'll lift your head up and realize that, wow, I'm actually pretty close. I've clicked off a few 15s, or I've done an 18 or something. I can see it. And then that feels really motivating because it's like, wow, look how far I've come. The best motivation is not, wow, how will it feel at the end? The best motivation is, wow, look how far I've come, because that's an earned motivation and an earned fulfillment rather than this dream of, won't it be really exciting to get my finisher's medal at the New York City Marathon, for example. So I think the key to goal setting is to pick your goal, set your goal, let your goal inform the process that you will use to achieve it. Make sure it's a process that will actually reliably get you there if you follow it. And then set the goal aside. Don't think about it too often, and just focus on what you have to do that day. Set your goal, work your plan.
That's really good. And that was the research from the book that I gathered, that, everybody's just creating routines to help them rather than the passion story that so many people have told. But after you said that just now, my question would be, where does willpower fit into all this? Or, does it even fit in?
There are moments when willpower is important, but I think if you don't need as much willpower if, one, you're focused just on what I have to do today, and then two, you construct a process that eliminates as many choices as possible. So this is a really simple example, but if your goal is to drink less soda and drink more water, the whole thing about choice architecture, where you would make sure you have 3 bottles of water on your desk at all times. So if you're thirsty, you reach for a bottle of water and you don't make a choice, then you don't need willpower if you don't have to make a choice. If you don't have ice cream in the house, which is definitely my Achilles heel, then I don't have to make a choice about whether I want to have that. And so it's really cool how that works if you can create it that way. And then there is research that shows, I'll bore you with a study.
Hey, not boring. I'm a nerd like that, so I like it.
Okay. All right. So here's a good one. Yeah. This researchers took a group where they were trying to get people to change a habit, and they gave them two coping strategies. One were taught whenever they had a moment of willpower need to say, I don't, whatever the thing was that they're not supposed to do. Another group was taught to say, I can't, whatever that thing is I want to do. And the third group was a control group that was given no strategy whatsoever. So at the end of this period, when they were measuring the success of the different groups, the people given no strategy, I think 3 out of 10 managed to change their habit and avoid the temptation. On the I don't side, 8 out of 10 managed to avoid it. And actually on the I can't, it was like 1 or 2. So I can't was actually a worse coping strategy than not having any strategy at all. And the reasoning behind it was I can't automatically opens you up to a choice. Like if I say, ooh, I can't miss a workout. Well, I could, because I can always do 2 tomorrow. Or, I worked out really hard yesterday. I'm kind of sore. And you can automatically start negotiating with yourself. And then you need willpower to overcome that. But if you say, I don't, now it's part of your identity. Now it is just who you are. So if you have kids, do you have to sit there every day and think to yourself, okay, do I need to take care of my kids today? No, you just do, right? Because that is who you are. So there is no choice. There's no willpower required. It's who you are, and it's what your identity is. So that I can't thing is a really powerful thing. And if you follow a process for, even if it's just a few weeks and get into the flow of it, you stop seeing it as something you have to do, and you start seeing it as something you just do. It's just part of who you are. And now you don't need willpower necessarily to do it, because if you see yourself as a runner, well, runners don't miss workouts. If you see yourself as a leader, leaders don't ignore interpersonal problems between team members. They deal with those and they fix them. A supervisor might, because a supervisor is just following guidelines and practices and rules. But a person that sees themselves as a leader, they're going to do those things. So the cool thing about following a process for a while is eventually you become, in your mind, the thing that you are trying to do. And that helps you hugely with willpower. But the first place to start is with choice architecture. Just try to get as many decisions out of the way as possible. The best one for me, if I start a day, here's how I start my day. It'll sound really cheesy, but the night before, whatever the most important thing I have to do the next day is that I have to do by myself. I set that up. I have the desk all set. I have whatever I need. I have everything ready for that. So I have absolutely no friction whatsoever between me and starting what is most important. Have a bottle of water on my desk, have a protein bar. I don't even eat breakfast away. I start that way. So I'm out of bed. My commute is 2 flights of stairs. I'm working within like 10 minutes of when I get up. That sounds kind of harsh, but it works for me because, one, that's just what I do. Yeah. There's no choices. I can flow right into what's most important. And let's say it takes an hour and a half, and I'm done. I feel really good early in my day because I've accomplished something that it was important for me to do. So I feel really good. And that kind of creates this nice inertia of, wow, that was cool. Knock that off. What's next? As opposed to if I ease into my day, at some point I have to say, okay, time to buckle down, time to focus. But that's a choice you have to make. You have to force yourself to do it. And I've lost all that momentum, and I have to forcibly create it. Whereas if I just flow right into it, off you go. So if I'm doing something physical for a while, the only difference to my start working right away thing is if I've decided I want to work out first thing. And if I do that, then I have my clothes right by the bed. So when I get up, they are right there, and I don't have to make a choice as to whether I work out. I'm all set up and I have to go. So I know that was a really long-winded answer, but when you force choices out and when you design a process that's part of your flow, and you build momentum every day, then you don't need nearly as much willpower because, willpower is choices. So I do the same thing with meals, like lunch. I have the same thing for lunch every day. I know it sounds boring, but I know exactly what it's going to be. I don't have to think. I don't have to make a choice. I don't have to waste any mental energy on it whatsoever. I can just do it.
No, I'm really glad we talked about willpower because I think that will help. I think that helps the conversation. There's been so many years of willpower being this ultimate thing, and you're saying just make choices ahead of time, which I think is really important and really practical for listeners. They can take that and go do something with that right now.
I do think willpower is something you can develop more of as time goes by,
Okay.
but I don't think it's something you can go from like, if there is such a thing, like 10% willpower to 100%. I don't think you could do that. We all have a certain amount, I think, in us.
Mm-hmm.
And so the less of it you have to use on just simple, stupid stuff, then the more of it you have to have available when there is a hard choice to make. Because you're not drained, you're not tired, you don't have decision fatigue, you don't have any of those things going against you. So I like to see willpower as something like I want to store it up
Yeah. No,
and
I'm with
only
you.
pull it out when I really need it,
Right.
as opposed to get to 2/3 of the way through the day and think, oh man, I'm already shot, and that's when you start making compromises with yourself and you give up.
That's really good. And, kind of wrapping up here on this same conversation of talking about the journey and showing up every day. And it's not easy. I mean, it is difficult, but, talking about
Sure.
the journey and happiness, everybody's looking for it. You say the key question to ask ourselves is, am I happy? So my question to you is then, is happiness always the main thing that matters, even when the journey is difficult, even when the process is hard to show up day in and day out?
Yeah, the way you have to define it though is happy is not, like I said, the new house, the new car, the new clothes. Those little teeny bursts of where it's like a little thrill.
Mm-hmm.
The happy that I refer to is the kind where you can sit contented and look around you and say, you know what, I may not be where I want to be, and I may never get to all the things that I want to get to, but I feel really good about what I'm doing. Feel really good about the path I'm on. And that leads to a sense of contentment, not the kind that causes you to be lazy, but the kind that causes you to say, I know how to do this, and I'm content with my ability to continue to work towards the things that I want to be. And they can be anything. Again, the whole thing about success, I don't mean that success is money or titles or promotions or possessions or anything else like that. You get to define it however you want. If success to you is strictly family related, then if your family is in a good, happy, solid place and you feel like you're an integral part of it, then you probably feel happy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a great thing. And shouldn't we want more of that?
Yep. No, that's really good.
Yeah, but your definition of success should be your own. If you go with someone else's, you will always feel a little discontented because other people can't tell you what makes you feel good.
Right.
You should know that. And then you should actively work to have as much of that in your life as you can. And it is work, but it pays off because you earn the happiness that you get.
That's a perfect way to end this on for people thinking about defining success for themselves and taking on new things or keep showing up for the same thing they've been doing. Jeff, you've offered so much today. Wow. I've got a lot to think about myself, but if there's something that we talked about that you just want to highlight here, or we might not have talked about it today, but what's one last piece of advice that you'd like to leave for listeners today?
All right, I have two. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
One, I have a lot of people that say, oh, wow, you hate Tony Robbins, because I do take a shot at Tony Robbins in my book. I love Tony Robbins. I think he does wonderful things. The problem I have is with the whole fire walk thing, where that's supposed to motivate. If you can do his fire walk, then that's supposed to give you all this power within that will carry you through the rest of your life. And I don't think it works that way. I've bungee jumped. It was exciting and thrilling, but it did not make me any more motivated the next day. The best way, and the reason that I don't feel that that's a way to build on success, is you didn't really earn anything. You closed your eyes, you gritted your teeth, and you walked across the fire. Yes, you overcame a fear, but you didn't really earn anything that you can look back on. So if you set out to do something hard and you work your plan and you follow your process and you accomplish what that is, then you have earned this feeling of, wow, I can do hard things, and you can carry that on into whatever the next thing is. And if a challenge comes your way that you didn't foresee, that's going to be hard to overcome, you can take a second and say, you know what, this is going to be really hard, but I know how to do this because I've done that before. I know how to put my head down, do the work, do what's required. I know how to get there. And that's a huge confidence thing, and it's a hugely empowering thing. So that was the point with that, which leads me to then my final thing, which is...
I was going to ask you about that actually, but we didn't get to it. So that was great that you highlighted
it. So that leads me to my last thing, which is, people love to talk about goals and dreams and things like that. And I end the book with, don't tell me you're your dreams. Don't even tell me your goals. Tell me your plan, because your plan is what will get you to the places that you want to go. And I lay out a number of those in the book, obviously, but goals and dreams are great, but they only inform your plan. So when you talk to people about what you want to accomplish, don't talk about the end result. Talk about your plan, and then have them hold you to your plan, not to that dream.
Boom. More actionable things that listeners can take away. Wow. I appreciate that, Jeff. My last question to you would be, where would you like to send people to find out more about you and your work?
My website is jeffhaden.com. It's Haden. I write for Inc. magazine, and so if you go to Inc. and search my name, it's Inc.com. You'll find about 1,500 articles or so. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm an influencer, which is the only time in my life I'll be on the same list with Richard Branson and Bill Gates and some of those folks. But hey, I'll take it. And I actually do correspond with and connect with people. So if you look me up there and connect and have questions or things, I do actually respond, maybe unlike some of the other folks. And I actually really enjoy that part. That's been the most fun part of doing this, is the people that have thoughtful questions or thoughtful comments, or that have looked at something I've written and said, I kind of agree with that, but I have a different take, because I don't have everything figured out. And I love when people point out things that I can do better. So please do.
All right, Jeff. Thank you so much for taking the time to share with us today.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in. I hope you got something out of these ideas. Go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.